Welcome to another episode of the Insurance Leadership Podcast. I'm Ryan Eaton, your host, and thankful to have you listening in. Today we have Drew Shockley with us, who is a Senior Vice President of Training and Development with EverQuote, and he brings us a great perspective of acquisitions. He sold his agency to a publicly traded company. He's going to kind of walk us through kind of the pros, the cons, and what he saw after the fact that he might have wished he would have known before. We're also going to get into the leadership side because he is responsible for the engagement of his team and training and development, something everyone here as leaders, you want to be able to strengthen your team. So excited to have him on, and let's go ahead and get started for today. Well, Drew, welcome to the podcast this morning, buddy.
So happy to be here, Ryan. Thanks for having me.
Well, I got to tell you that your setup here and your video and your audio, I feel like I'm with a true professional this morning. It's an honor to have you here, buddy.
Well, I appreciate it. We kind of got this little studio set up. I'm in our office in Evansville, Indiana. I'm just outside of one of our conference rooms. It's a beautiful day here, but I got some lights and got this nice microphone, and hopefully what I say is more impactful because it sounds good, right?
That's right. Well, it looks fantastic. Well, so let's get started. Why don't you give everyone like a little overview about yourself, your family, kind of what brought you into the insurance industry?
Yeah, of course. This is actually a pretty funny story, and I love to tell it. But I grew up in East Tennessee, and I actually grew up. My grandfather was a third-generation dairy farmer, so most of my childhood, most of my upbringing was spending time riding around with him in his truck, taking care of cows, putting up hay, raking hay. I'm pretty sure I was driving a tractor down the road when I was about 10 or 11 years old. They might arrest you for that kind of stuff these days, but that was really my childhood. But one thing he kind of instilled in me, he said, son, it's my granddad, he said, when you finish high school, you're going to college. And I said, all right. What, sir? Yes, sir. Whatever you want me to do. So I started school in East Tennessee. I went to East Tennessee State University, and then I ended up transferring to a small Christian college up here in southern Indiana called Oakland City University. Met my wife here. She's from Missouri, and we had a really great college experience, and I happened into the insurance industry just by chance. When my wife and I got married, my father-in-law said, hey, you need to go and buy health insurance for my daughter. And I said, yes, sir, you got it. And I ended up at the local Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield office, and literally out of a conversation, just out of a joke, I got a job offer and started working there 2 weeks later when I was 21 years old. So that's how I got into insurance. It's a great story.
We've talked about it several times on this podcast before, but no one plans to go in insurance, but everyone who's in here they love it, and it just happens by chance. So I love that you said that too. Well, so look, let's talk a little bit about your company, but kind of before we go into some of the acquisition points, why don't you tell about EverQuote, then Eversurance, and then CrossPoint, kind of how all that came to be, if you don't mind.
Yeah, for sure. So, I guess I can kind of go back a little bit. I started my career working for Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield, which is a, big health insurance carrier, really headquartered and based here in Indiana. They're one of the largest blues in the country. And so I got my start there, spent about 3 years doing that. My wife and I, early on in our marriage, started having kids, and somebody told me, they said, hey, if I knew what you knew, I would go and start my own agency. And I said, I don't even know what that means, but okay. I started kind of doing a little bit of research to see what it would mean to start an agency and to be able to help people. We were really working at Anthem in the individual health insurance space and Medicare. So I was helping people with Medicare supplements, Medicare Advantage. I was working there in 2005 when Medicare Advantage came out, early 2006. And I started researching and looking to see what it would look like to start an agency. And had a really close friend of mine, a guy named Josh Mushlock, whom you know, Ryan, and started sharing these conversations with him. And in late 2007, walking into 2008, we started developing the concept and the business model for us to start a little two-man agency that focused on the individual health insurance market and Medicare, working with retirees, et cetera. And so in March of 2008, that's when CrossPoint began here in Evansville, Indiana.
Man, that's awesome. So if we fast forward just a little bit, EverQuote, or excuse me, CrossPoint, you ran a successful company helping thousands of people each year. EverQuote then came knocking. Was it something that you and Josh had ever thought about, hey, we want to build this agency with the potential of selling it down the road? Or was it one of those things that when they came knocking and calling, you guys were open to the offer and then just kind of things progressed from there?
It's a great question. Honestly, Josh and I were really just head down, here in Evansville, Indiana, just doing our thing, building a business. We starting in 2008. You got to rewind a little bit for those of you that are in the healthcare industry. That's when Obama was running for president. Primarily on healthcare reform. Got elected. In November of 2008. Took office in January of 2009, and then we started the full-on kind of debate and establishment of the Affordable Care Act. So, early on in our business, there were massive headwinds, massive changes, lots of things that we were having to learn and deal with. And we were literally 25 and 26 years old, when we launched that company. And so we had to learn a lot very early on, and it was in the face of all these changes, federal regulations. As you fast forward into 2014, that was really the implementation of the Affordable Care Act and the Affordable Care Act marketplaces. There were a lot of agencies and brokers that were leaving the healthcare industry because of what the Affordable Care Act did, right? Josh and I just kept our head down, kept working. We think we were running against the grain a little bit. We were growing and we were hiring people and we were trying to figure out, this Affordable Care Act marketplace. We believe that we had a niche and we kind of stuck to it. And so we were adding people here. We were growing our agent staff. We were growing and expanding the number of states where we were serving. We were really, focused on the under 65 market, individual health, and helping people navigate the Affordable Care Act. We didn't really know what we were building, Ryan, but what we were building was something that was unique. And so, again, just kind of head down, doing our thing. There were companies that came along to us and wanted to have acquisition talks for a number of years. But again, we were just head down. We were two young guys just making it happen. 2008 is when we began. So we hit that 10-year milestone, and every year was up and to the right, and we had more team members, more success, and we started to get a little bit more serious when we realized what was happening in the market, and there was a lot of consolidation. There were a lot of companies that were getting bigger, and it was getting a little bit more difficult for us to market on a national scale. And acquisition costs were going up for running online campaigns, finding clients. And so that really started to make us think a little bit more serious, but we really wanted the right buyer. For those of you that are watching and maybe you're in this spot, there are a lot of companies. I kind of categorize acquisitions sort of two ways. There's kind of aggregators that just sort of go out and buy up a bunch of companies, buy up a bunch of revenue, and then try to figure it out later. And there's very strategic buyers that are buying a company for a specific reason. And that's how we really felt about our relationship with EverQuote. EverQuote is a publicly traded insurance marketing company based in Boston, Massachusetts. And when they came along, the conversation was quite a bit different as opposed to other ones that we'd had in the past.
That's right. Well, you kind of hit on acquisitions a little bit there, and you kind of talk about a publicly traded company. Let's kind of flip over to post-acquisition here, and you went from making every decision in your company, you and Josh, right? And then you took it to where now you run with a publicly traded company, and there's obviously some things that are different, better, negative, probably some differences as well. What would you say was the biggest pro to you personally through that acquisition?
Sure, it's a great question. As at the time of this recording, we are 19, 20 months in to acquisition. So coming up in a few months here will be 2 years. And I'll tell you, I thought I would work, a little bit less post-acquisition. It's good. The check comes in, the money's in the bank, and you kind of like exhale a little bit. And then, you're like, hey, just back to work. Josh and I were relatively young, from an acquisition standpoint, to kind of sell our first business. We were 36 and 37 kind of when that happened. So this is, just a couple years ago. And, we did. I mean, as you know, I mean, at the time of acquisition, we had about 50 full-time employees. And, we had about 45 or so agents that were selling insurance, on a day-to-day basis, some support staff, et cetera. But if we wanted to make a decision, we used to just roll up in a conference room, write some things on a napkin and be like, okay, let's yeah, how you feeling about it? What's your gut? Yeah, all right, let's do that. Let's go. And that's the way that it worked, in a small, closely held company. And, of course, that's not the way that it works, now. EverQuote, in total, we have about 700 employees, at EverQuote. We have now, our part of the org, which is the agency, the direct-to-consumer agency. It encompasses about 350 employees. So we have team members all over the country, fully remote, W-2, working from home. We have agents, licensed agents that serve all 5 major lines of insurance: health, Medicare, life, home, and auto.
You're touching it all.
The process, of making a decision is quite a bit different, in a good way. Now, if you want to do something, you have to put together a plan, write up a document, share it with the team a week in advance, get everybody's thoughts and on a pre-read, and roll up into the meeting and make a decision. That's not the way it worked, in the past.
Have you gotten out of some of the HR meetings you previously had to have, or are you still pulled into those?
Oh man, I love our people ops team. Our people ops team, here at EverQuote is incredible, and they do some really, really fun stuff. I enjoy get to work with our people ops team on good stuff. Like employee development.
That's right.
Leadership development. It's not all terminating people. That ain't gonna happen. But I enjoy working with our people ops team for good stuff, and so I get to collaborate with them quite a bit, and we have some all stars there. But It's there's so many pros, to watching, our business, as Josh and I, really led, our business and led that company for over 12 years. And, I think in a sense, there's many entrepreneurs and many people that have started companies that, get to the point where your company is having a lot of success. You're having a lot of success, and you're cashing checks, you're making money, you got your family growing, you're getting all the quote things, that you want: a nicer house, nicer truck, all that stuff. And I think, in some entrepreneurs' life, you reach that point where you're a little bit less risk, you have a little bit less of a risk tolerance, because you don't want to mess up
what you built,
what you have going. And so, I don't know if that's exactly where Josh and I were, because again, we were up and to the left, every year, and things were going really, really well. But it is somewhat of a relief to have, at 12 years into a business, to have, have went ahead and kind of, celebrated in the success of what you built. But Josh and I weren't just looking to cash a big check and then ride off into the sunset. We were 36 years old, right? Josh is 37. So we were really looking for a strategic buyer, and we were looking for a home. We were looking for a place to continue growing, building, and doing what we were doing. And I think that's a very different place as a seller.
Right.
I think I would challenge, if you're out there and you're going through these talks and, you're talking to somebody, I would really, really challenge you to think about what you want post-acquisition, and share that with the buyer. Because Josh and I, we very much loved what we were doing, and we wanted to continue growing and building. And so it's good to be able to celebrate the success and all that stuff. But then, money's in the bank, and, you kind of just put your head down and you log back in and keep going. And so that's what we've been doing. And it's been great to have a ton of resources and some extremely smart people with, our leadership team, and, be able to take more risk, without laying it all on the line.
With that, is there anything specifically that you wish you would have known prior to negotiations, or maybe looking kind of in the rearview mirror saying, hey, I wish I'd have known this prior to signing, or I wish I'd have known this closing the deal, or hey, this is one thing we didn't consider? Is there something that you might recommend to people out there who are in the middle of this acquisition right now?
I mean, the biggest thing is kind of what I just shared a moment ago. Just really, really, really ponder what you want to do post acquisition, because some people, they just want to kind of be one and done, and they want to go do something else, and that's fine if that's what you want to do. But me personally, I felt compelled because I was, I wasn't just selling, my portion of the company. I was also bringing 50 people along, and I was taking them along that journey with me. And then, we've grown to about 350 team members now in our agency, and I feel responsible for those people too, because I recruited them, I brought them on board, and so, I challenge you, if you're out there and you're a seller, really, really ponder, contemplate, write down what it is that you want to do, and share that with your buyer. We all know that not all acquisitions, end up in a successful, state, and I think it has to do with lack of understanding between the expectations of the buyer and the seller post acquisition. You can agree on a price, you can agree on a multiple, you can agree on a number, and everything can be great and good. But if you don't have a clear picture of what's going to happen post acquisition, you're setting yourself up for for disappointment, or for worse, just a loss.
No, that's great advice, Drew. Great advice. So look, I want to take the conversation now over kind of to the leadership base of it and kind of what you're doing now and how you're training, developing teams. But for those who aren't actually watching by video today, maybe you're listening to this, you got to go through, Drew, the anatomy of a goat behind you. We kind of hit it before because I thought it was so good, but tell where that came from. Most of us are thinking greatest of all time, but tell us kind of how you guys have your own spin on it and kind of give a little bit of maybe kind of the feel of your company, so to say.
Yeah, for sure. So, if you are watching by video, you can see it here, but it really goes back to the original founders of EverQuote. It's a guy named Seth Birnbaum and Tomas Revez, and unfortunately, Seth actually passed away unexpectedly in 2020, a couple months after acquisition. But Seth was like larger than life, like everything that you would think, from like an entrepreneur and a publicly traded CEO. He brought everybody along. He had everybody aligned on the vision. He really caused people to move, caused people to action. But he also did it with with love and care. But before they actually started EverQuote, Seth and Tomas worked for a company. And the story goes that this guy they were working for worked them really, really hard. They were working 6-7 days a week. Granted, they're two MIT grads, genius dudes, up in Boston. But they came up with this phrase. They just kind of started calling each other goats, and not in the sense of greatest of all time, but like, hey, dude, you're a goat. Like, you're doing all the work. Just go do goat work, right? And so they were working all the time. So anyway, when EverQuote came along and they started having success, of course, this was their own company, and it started to grow and grow and grow, and eventually they took it public in 2018. The goat kind of became the unofficial mascot, and this image that you see behind me, is the anatomy of a goat. Kind of encompasses, these 5 values that team members at EverQuote, our employees or team members, whether you're an engineer, an analyst, you work on the agency side, you're, senior leader, CEO, whatever. This GOAT image kind of includes 5 really attributes or 5, values of the company. So I'll kind of start at the top left. You can't see it too well, but the first one is data centricity. Again, MIT grads, our company's full of genius level people, but we make decisions with data. And you can't just come in and say, I feel this way. You got to have data to back it up. So data centricity is a huge value of ours. Heart, you can see the heart kind of cut out of the goat. We want to have heart. We want people to have be passionate about what they do. The bottom one is behind this mic stand is bootstrapping. This really resonated with Josh and I. Bootstrapping, means you do everything you can to try to get a project off the ground. EverQuote did not raise a lot of money, before having success and going public, and bootstrapping is a concept we talk about often. On the top, we have tenacity. This is you think about exactly what that term means. We just work hard and we're tenacious. We're tenacious entrepreneurs. We want people to have that mindset. And then finally, at the end is impact. We want to know that what the company's doing is having an impact on insurance shoppers, on consumers, and that really aligns with the company mission statement. And so that's the anatomy of a goat.
I love it. Well, I like how you set it out there clear for your people, right? They know kind of what the company's about. They know what your values are. I think it's great to have that. Do you have that throughout your organization, or is it just in that one room?
It's on the walls. It's terms that we call each other. It's on like internal Slack. You've got these goat emojis, and we have for our top agents, we have a top goats award. And I told you this, but the reason I'm actually sitting right now where we host our internal company podcast, and it's called Goatcast. So goat lives on across the company, and we do our best to push it forward.
Drew, that is awesome, man. Well, look, let me ask you a little bit about your training program. So, when we were talking the other day on the phone, you were telling me that you were kind of working on some of your development for your team, and you mentioned something that you were doing with the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership by John Maxwell. And I love how you're kind of pulling that in. Just give us kind of a high-level view of how you do from a training and development standpoint. Are you in a big classroom setting? Are you doing it one-on-one? Kind of, is it just, hey, all of our new hires come through? What does kind of your bring someone on, get them a part of the team, get the culture, get them understanding how their leadership feels, acts, thinks, operates? I'd love to kind of know that from a high-level view.
Yeah, for sure. So, when you start a business, like Josh and I did, we were, we were the two, founders, so we never really had like a title. We all just, we both just kind of did a lot of things. Josh, kind of naturally navigated to, finance, to operations, to strategy, to systems, tools, and he always, had a plan going for us. My natural kind of instinct was more on the sales side, leading our sales teams, training our agents, developing them, working with carriers, and spending time, out, with our teams. And so, when we went through the acquisition, one of the things that, you get to do is you start to move into a role that fits your best and natural tendencies. And so my title today, I guess, is Senior Vice President of Training and Development. I'm still, working to figure out what that means. No, not really. I know exactly what it means. I have 4 trainers that are on my team. I have 2 trainers that work to do home and auto training for our new agents, and I have 2 trainers that do Medicare and health. And so I kind of oversee that part of the program. That's when we bring new people on, and we've brought in a lot of new people on,
right?
In the last 12 to 18 months. And then, the development aspect of it was, is really, is really the perfect example is exactly what we're doing with this 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. And so we have 38 managers and team leaders that work with our agent staff. Again, we have about 350 people in our part of the org. And we decided earlier this year that we wanted to take our team through leadership development courses. And so we chose John Maxwell's 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. We put everybody together in groups of 8 or 9. And what we do is we meet weekly in these groups. It's all virtual because we have teams all over the country. We have an office in Austin, Texas. We have an office in San Antonio, Boston, Massachusetts, Evansville, and then we have an engineering team with about 40 people in Belfast, Northern Ireland. So we, our leadership development program is all virtual. We can't get in the same room. All of our training for agents is virtual. We can't get in the same room. And so, over the last couple of years, I've really had to learn how to engage people, how to get my lighting right and, audio and all that stuff and engage people in a virtual environment. But the birth of the leadership development groups, really came out of just a passion for growing our team members, helping them get the fundamentals of those leadership principles so that it would permeate into our culture, so that we could continue developing our team members and so that we could continue fostering the type of culture that we want, which is people first. We want to take care of our people. We want to, pay them the best, give them the best benefits, give them the right, areas to development, give them all the best opportunities in the world, and then, turn that into the way that they treat clients, right? We want clients to enjoy working with us, have a great experience. But the leadership development program, we meet once a week, pull people together. I'm doing that along with a person on our people ops team named Abby Tranchita. We work together on it, and we facilitate those groups every week.
So your training, obviously you have to have sales, product training, because you got to know what you're doing. Obviously, the development of people, personal development is huge, right? You want people good for the long term, because if their family lives are out of whack or their financial lives are out of whack, it's going to roll over into the office. What have you found to be more valuable training for the long haul? More product sales development, personal development, or is there a blend there that works good for you guys?
It's a great question. we historically have had a lot of people come and join our team that have had no insurance experience, and we're actually okay with that, because we want traits, we want personality traits that match the culture that we want to create. We want people who care about people. We want people who are interested in serving others. We want people that can come in and join, our mission and vision, to help people protect life's most important assets, their family, their property, and their future. That's our mission statement. And so we want people, when they wake up in the morning, they log in, from their house, we want them to live that mission out in every call that they have and every interaction that they have with a client, and also how they treat each other individually. So, we don't really worry or care much, whether someone's had a lot of experience. We spend a lot of time in training, at least early on, in onboarding, teaching relational skills, developing, interpersonal company relationships, really bringing them into this very familial, type atmosphere. That's hard with a company of 700 people that truly has employees all over the U.S. and in Northern Ireland, and it's difficult. So you have to be really intentional about it. Our Slack threads have their own vibe. They have a life of their own. And so our managers, our team leaders, all of our people, they're credited with really creating that atmosphere where people want to come into work. They believe in what we're doing. They love the people that they're doing it with, and they think that the work they know that the work they're doing is impactful. And so, you didn't hear me say anything about deductibles and copays, because that's the easiest part. But every healthy culture and every healthy business that I've been a part of had a team of people that were fully aligned behind one vision, loved the people that they were working with, and felt like the work they were doing was impactful. And so that's what we try to do.
So what have you found to be the most, when you got people in Boston, San Antonio, Indiana, New Ireland, how do you engage those people? What is the best thing you found through maybe online meetings where they're not checking their watches, but they're actually sitting there and they're engaging with the conversations, or they're giving their input and value? What's kind of the secret sauce there that you've learned?
Well, there's a lot. It's in order to be engaging, I think in a virtual world, you got to bring as many elements as possible. So, we have town halls, we have company town halls, where we bring in, we have different segments of people that present. We have music going. We play songs. We play live music. It's one of the things I love to do too. I play music. One of the other guys here in the office, he plays music. So we'll get together, pull the guitars out.
I love it.
We'll keep things, really, really interesting, and try to give our team members, the information that they want.
It's like a Tony Robbins conference.
Nobody wants to log in and just, watch somebody flip through a slideshow, right?
That's right.
I don't know if you watch Jimmy Fallon, but, a lot of people do, and he has a segment where he slow jams the news.
Yeah.
And so, he says something. So we brought in our own version of, slow jamming the news, here at our town halls, and so it's made it's been a lot of fun, at least for me.
That is awesome.
But we get a lot of good feedback too. And
keep it fun, man. That is great. I love that. Slow jams. That is fantastic. So real quick, we got time for probably two more questions. I want to hit that John Maxwell point. What is your favorite lesson, or what's your favorite principle that you've taken from the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership?
Great question. Obviously they're 21. Maxwell would say, hey, all these laws are important. He would say all these laws, can stand alone. All these laws will challenge you, and all these laws will hold you accountable. But really, the biggest, and I think probably the most, famous quote of John Maxwell, at least one of them. He has so many. He's been around for like 100 years, but my favorite one is, leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. I think we live in a culture where people look at your title, and they look at where you are on the org chart, or they look at your pay, or they look at your house, your vehicle, whatever, and they think that you reach a status, or you reach a level of, quote, leadership when you get a title or get a piece of paper. So we open those sessions and we say, look, like, if you're here, you're already a leader, because leadership is influence. It's nothing more, nothing less. And we all have the ability to influence. You can influence people below you, you can influence people beside you, and then you can influence up. So leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. And if you take that approach, I think it kind of flips a lid on what a lot of us believe. From a leadership perspective, you can't make a decision if you're not the CEO. You can't do this if you're not the CFO. And it's simply not true.
That's very true. Great point, and I love that principle. So one of the things that I'd like you to hit on is, it kind of talks about the law of the inner circle, and we have a lot of leaders listening in here that are looking to kind of develop their leadership team, right, to help them sharpen the saw, or iron sharpens iron, whatever you want to call it, right? We want to be able to strengthen the people around us as well. What's been the biggest point you've taken kind of from that principle with your leadership team? Because I think y'all have done a fantastic job of building a culture, especially in a publicly traded company. That's a lot harder to do, and it sounds like you're doing a lot of the right things. So I'd love to know, again, kind of what are you doing there to strengthen that inner circle?
It's a great question. We are, Josh and I, built CrossPoint in over a 12-year period, and we had some incredible people on our team for a number of years that helped us get there. It wasn't us. It was our team, and it was everybody collectively working toward a common goal, and that hasn't changed. Since becoming a part of EverQuote and then launching our consumer-facing brand, which is Eversurance. We've continued to bring on the smartest, most talented people that we could find to come and join our team. I'll just name a few. We brought on a guy named Garrett Kitch. Garrett Kitch lives in Austin, Texas. He's been extremely influential, in the development of our org. He came from eHealth Insurance, where he ran all of their Medicare sales teams, thousands of agents. He comes in and he brings that tenacity. He brings the experience, the background, but he also aligns perfectly with our heart and desire to make to be impactful. I'll think of guys like George Taylor, who came from the industry, but came in and he's the most relational leader that I can think of. People love working for George, and people want to do well because they know George is rooting for them. And so when you think about building your team, you gotta put people in place, that love people, that have kind of a servant's heart, that sort of approach. And I think if you do that and you put people first, you will have success in everything that you do. If you get the right people on the bus and you're all headed in the same direction, aligned on a mission, aligned on a vision, and you wake up every day and log in, with that in mind, you'll have a lot of success.
No, that's great, Drew. Well, look, acquisition, leadership, you nailed them both today, man. I can't tell you how much I appreciate you being on the show today, and thank you for coming in, my friend.
Absolutely, anytime. Hope to come back sometime.
That sounds good. See you, buddy.
See you, Ryan.
Well, thank you for joining us today for another episode of the Insurance Leadership Podcast, where a good plan today is better than a great plan months from now. Thank you very much.